On our morning show today, River Valley District Administrator Loren Glasbrenner is in the studio with us on a beautiful day. Good morning, Loren. How you doing?
I'm good, Phil. Good morning to you. What a beautiful drive to come on over to Richland Center from over by, Spring Green where my office is. Just a beautiful drive and a beautiful morning for us in southwestern Wisconsin.
I had to think about, so it's the first day of track practice across the state of Wisconsin, including River Valley. They might be outside running today, and then they might not for a couple of weeks. That's the way March goes.
That's kind of the way March goes, yeah. We're excited. I mean, we have track practice starting, although the other sports can't officially jump in. We've got weightlifting and, that open gym concept that they do. So we're out of one season where basketball is still playing at the tournament, and we have other things that are in state qualifying, but everybody's getting ready for baseball and fast pitch girls softball, and we're getting ready for girls soccer, and we're getting ready for golf, and we're having track practice starting. So they get a couple beautiful days, and then what the weatherman says will predict whether we're inside or outside for sure.
I'm amazed how busy that the students stay because we're coming up on music, solo ensembles, and things like that.
Yeah, we sure are. So this last weekend we had state competitions in mock trial, which I'll talk a little bit here in a second about mock trial, and again remind people what that is, because we didn't have that in Fenimore back in the day, But we had powerlifting, which is weightlifting. We had a couple qualifiers for that. So a huge shout out to Reagan Sackett and Presley Montry. They were two young ladies that went on in state powerlifting. But we also, like you said, we have solo and ensemble. They've had their district competitions, and now we'll go to regional and then a state competition later on. And then we've just celebrated things like FFA Ag Week and all the different things that happen. We had CTE Week, which is the Career Technology Education Week. All of those things that kids do, again, are those wonderful things that keep them involved in school. So we want to celebrate those. As we celebrate athletics, we also want to celebrate all the activities that the kids are involved in, for sure.
Mock trial, that's something that I was never real familiar with, but River Valley has a rich tradition in that particular event.
Yeah, so Mr. Jason Hollenberger, who, by the way, is a graduate of Fenimore High School, he's our coach of mock trial, and really what mock trial is a great competition where kids go into simulation. They simulate a real criminal court case, and they get to kind of play a role. It's kind of like acting, but it's got argument and kind of debate really in the deep parts of it too. So they get coached, and then the students act as attorneys or witnesses preparing like legal strategies or competing against other people in a courtroom. So again, the roles are the kids playing the attorneys or witnesses, and they really take on that role. They kind of get a name, they get a persona, they get a whole attitude for the day when they jump into this mock trial specifically. And then they have case materials that come forward, and at different competitions you get new case material, and then it throws it together so that the teams compete against each other. So this last weekend was state mock trial, and we went against the winner right away. So in our first round, we went against Whitefish Bay, who Whitefish Bay has another huge tradition of this, and we didn't make it, but we lost by 2 points in our first trial for River Valley on Friday night. But they recovered on Saturday, and they won their trials against Kaukauna, Wanakee, and Xavier Appleton. So we did walk away with a 3-1 overall record at state, and we ranked 6th in the state. For our little team coming from River Valley, a nice rural school, we capitalized on the intelligence and the great argumentative skills of our kids. And so we're really excited about that. Huge shout out to mock trial. They've done great work. Again, this is another state finish for Valley, and we just really are proud of the work that those kids do and the work that Mr. Hollenberger does as well. Just does a great thing. But what it brings forward is also the skills that some of those activities bring to our children. And when we want kids to be efficient, wonderful community members someday, we want to make sure that we're putting them through the rigor of fun things that get them ready for their adulthood. And I think of mock trial and the skills that it develops. And so I believe in public speaking. I have a big mouth. So that's something that's good, but you have to do that in the right way. And so public speaking is highlighted, but with mock trial, then there's critical thinking, teamwork. You have to analyze the case, think about the skills that go against it, and then you have to present it in a professional manner. And those are the things we want from our neighbors, right, as they grow older. So those great job skills that the kids are learning, I think are the highlights of mock trial that I'm really pleased with. When you think of forensics, forensics, when you think of Salon Ensemble, when you think of all the things that the kids are involved in, you want them to be prepared for something that comes later on in life. And I think all of those things do. And so we're really excited about the great things that they do with this activity and lots of activities, whether it's FFA, whether it's choir, whether it's football, whether it's fast-pitch softball. All of those things get them ready for the skills as an adult later. And that's really what your public schools are all about.
One of the things that stuck out when you were mentioning who River Valley took on in mock trial, all of those schools, if I'm not mistaken, are Division I schools.
They are. Those are Division I schools that have, I'll just be frank, a lot more money than Valley has. And those are schools that put forth time and effort and research beyond the day, just like our kids did. But our kids compete with them because they're not only intelligent, but they're really savvy. They really work hard and they want to be professionals, and they go for the big hit. So I'm really proud of the work that they do and the competition that they bring forth to bring River Valley to the highlight of that great competition.
Last time you were here, I think we touched on this a little bit, but your CISA 3 partnership, and you're proud of that?
Yeah, we're always proud of CISA 3, and I just always want to educate our general public around the idea that we have cooperative education service agencies. That's what the CESA stands for. And so within the state of Wisconsin, I believe there are 14 CISAs. We are part of CISA 3, which is the southwestern corner. And for all the people that get worried about whether or not we're consolidating services or we're working with consortiums to save money, that's really what CISA 3 offers us. They're a great opportunity for us to bring together and to kind of co-op in a way with other districts. And so CISA 3 has offered us tons of cooperation that has really saved us a lot of money. And then when you look at that, we bring it together for library services. We bring it together for some of our Adobe Acrobat or any of our computer technology. We can go together in consortium and get better prices. They help us coach through some of the DPI projects that we're in. There's CTE, again, that consumer and technical education incentives that we can work together on. Carl Perkins is, again, CTE. So there's a lot of industry connections that get made at CISA that allow us to cooperate and work together on things. So Richland Center has a co-op with CISA 3 as well, just like River Valley. But basically, River Valley and Weston are the top two kind of northern ones, and it goes all the way down to Southwestern, which is on the border of Illinois. And so all of us together work together to save our districts and our local entities money so that we can get all the things done that we need to get done, but also work together to make sure that we're learning from each other.
Right. And lots of benefits for these students. Preparing them for the workforce even faster. Right?
It does. It does get them ready for the workforce even faster, but it also puts a regional perspective on it. Everybody in River Valley thinks about River Valley in its own entity, but when you put it into a CISA, then you're thinking about a region. You're thinking about the Richlands and the Riverdales and the Fenimores and the Boscobels and everybody going together to really have a regional perspective of what we want our kids to have. So we work together every month. All the superintendents get together and work with the CISA agent that's up there. His name's Mr. Jamie Nutter. He's our superintendent of the CISA 3 region. And we just talk. We talk about the politics, but also the programming and all the opportunities that we have to work through. Our big talk on this last Friday was the enormous healthcare costs that are coming toward districts. Our healthcare continues to be, not only in your business here at WRCO, I'm sure, but also in school districts, an increasing level of costs that we just can't get our hands around. It's really difficult. And with 175 employees at the River Valley School District and providing health care, that's something that we have to negotiate every year, if not every other year. So we talked about health care. Whose costs are going up? Who's going with what partner? Who's getting the best deals? How do we continue to work together to maybe create consortiums there as well so that we can get better prices and still provide the service to our employees?
Now, it used to be just a little bonus that employees would get thrown. And, you know, I'm talking 40 years ago. It was kind of like, oh, by the way, here's some health insurance. But anymore, that's like top things when people are looking for employment.
Yeah. And I think that's something in the professional world of education that has changed a ton. Everybody used to kind of pick at the teachers and say, well, you get your summers off and you get free health care. There's nobody that gets free health care in education anymore. Most teachers have to pay 50% or more of their own health care, and it has come at the cost of salaries that continue to be lower than others. So back in the day, again, I started my first teaching job up in Green Bay, Wisconsin, just right around $20,000. And in that idea, I got health care for my wife and I at that time. And that was this big incentive. Now that we don't pay for all their health care, it's not quite the incentive that it used to be. So they are not getting 100% free health care. They are not getting the summer off. They're working all summer on different projects that we work on. And so I think the face of education has really changed a lot. It's a great benefit. It's a great schedule. I don't want to say that they aren't getting great things, but it's a huge cost for a local district. And it's something that when healthcare goes way up, it affects the whole budget for sure.
It definitely does. One other thing about your CISA 3 partnership and whatnot, you've got an excellent facility at River Valley.
Yes, we do.
And I think you have invited other schools in to kind of share in that and maybe use some of the equipment too, right?
That's for sure. We do have some CTE grant money that we got a couple of years ago, so that specifically my tech ed department has really had some great improvements. So our new wood shop that we put in the last 12 months is something that came out of our budget. We didn't get any referendum dollars for that. So I don't want everybody to think that there was a big referendum dollar that came in for that. But that wood shop came out of our budget, and it was something that we had to do if we wanted to continue to offer wood shop and woodworking with our students. Some of our equipment was original to the middle school, back then a junior high, when we moved into that building. So a lot of our old wood shop equipment was from the late 60s and early 70s. We had to update that. And as 7th and 8th grade transitioned over to the high school, we knew it'd be better to offer that in that space over there. So we took a different part of the auto shop and turned it into our wood shop. So we have an auto shop. Now we have an updated wood shop. And we also still have a welding lab where we go through a lot of metals work there too. Our auto shop also has within it a lot of equipment that is new to our region for, I guess I'd call it technology in the workforce. So it's got hydrometers and it's got some great workings in there that help us to, again, get kids career and life ready if they want to go into that skilled labor or advanced labor practice as well. So we try to keep up with the Joneses to offer those great things because we know that kids will leave River Valley High School and go straight to a career or go straight to an apprenticeship. So we want to make sure kids are ready for that as well.
Doing this program, it's been a learning experience for me too, because I talk to area administrators who are kind of going through the same thing, trying to cut this and that. And yes. You, along with other area districts, are trying to, make it look pretty feasible that you're going to be cutting away maybe some more, hopefully not programs, but maybe some employment in the next few years, trying to get that down a little bit, right?
Yeah. I mean, there isn't a school district that isn't strapped for dollars right now in the state of Wisconsin. We have 421, I believe, public school districts throughout the state of Wisconsin, and there's been a large push to really right size, is what I'll call it, making sure that you are pulling back and making sure that you're offering things to the number of students that you have. And again, River Valley in its heyday was right around 1,500 children. Right now it's around 1,000 kids. So that changes. People always say, well, then get rid of staff, get rid of administration, get rid of things. And we have tried to get rid of things, and I will say in the most logical, organized way possible. So again, you know that we had an elementary in Lone Rock that closed back in our history. There was an elementary in Arena that closed. We just last year closed the elementary up in Plain. So those three closings of those buildings really gave us some savings now that we're all on the same campus. But it's not as if we can cut one single person from a program. We have to continue to offer the great things that are required for us to be there for a kid in a public school, but also pull back and have a balance as we right size. So again, we're always looking at it. In the next 2 years, even though we're not in a referendum right now, as many will go to referendum in April, River Valley is trying to be really mindful of how we spend every dollar so that we, in future years, I would guess in 2 more years when we have to go back for operational referendum, we can look at our citizens and say, we have right-sized the whole way along. We can't just do it at the drop of a hat. So we're looking at everybody that retires, everybody that's employed as being an opportunity to have the conversation. Is this something we need to have? Could we pull back? Could we do it a different way? So we are really being really careful. I think many districts are being very, very careful, but I don't want you to think just because it's not a referendum year that we're spending money crazily. We're really being careful to save money or to cut all along so that we continue to right size as we go year by year by year.
You're good for the next 2 years, but and I'm
we
sure
are.
You're hoping 2 years down the road, maybe some kind of funding changes a little bit.
Yeah, again, I say it every time I come. I wish there was a different way to fund schools, and it's a great job. I love the job of district leader over at River Valley. It's a great job. It's a great district. I think we're one of the finest rural districts in Wisconsin, so I'm really proud of the work we do. Yet, there's always this thing that hangs over us kind of like a cloud about school funding. And it's something that a lot of people have talked about. And there are so many pressures that get put on our budget that we can't control. Healthcare came in. Great. We have to figure out what to do there. So if we spend more money on healthcare, then money has to come from somewhere. And it comes from a general fund of where do we take it from? Fixing up, like improving things from throughout the buildings. So just basic remodeling and costs of that costs us a ton of money. Something that happens with transportation. For right now, the gas prices that you and I, Phil, are paying that have gone through the roof, so are the bus companies. So they're going to give us a higher price. And it's mandated that I provide busing to every child as they come into my campus. So all of those things affect the budget. And so we have to be really careful as we move ahead. I wish there was a different way to fund schools. I wish that it wasn't all on the burden and the back of our property owners. You don't have starter homes like you used to. I think my dad once told me the starter home in Fenimore, Wisconsin, which was a 3-bedroom ranch, nothing fancy, but I think it was right around $35,000 back in 1970. So in 1970, that house cost that. That house is now valued way above $200,000. And so property values have gone up so much that I don't think a lot of young couples that are having kids can get the starter homes that they wish they could have. And so with that comes this idea of property tax. Is that the best way to fund schools? And there are a lot of states that are opening up the conversation to have schools funded differently so that it's not on the burden of the owner of the land. So property tax shouldn't be the sole benefit, the sole factor, I think, in school funding. But that's going to take legislators to have some guts. They're going to have to dig in and really think about how we fund our schools rather than continuing to put Band-Aids on it. There's been this big talk around this 400-line item thing that veto that Tony Evers, the governor, put into his budget this last year. And so because he put a slash mark in the right spot, he was able to strategize that districts continue to get money for the next 400 years. It's not a ton of money, but it was some money. He had to play a game because across the aisle, others were playing a game. And so, yes, it looks bad. Is that a great thing to do, to put a line item through a budget? No, I don't think that's an honest, fair way to put it. But I also don't think then not funding schools is fair as well, because I'm a public educator. So I just wish that we could have some bipartisan conversations around school funding. I think there was a 2019 Blue Ribbon Commission that was a bipartisan agreement to study how we funded schools. That's just 6 years ago. They did this commission. They brought it forward, both Republicans and Democrats, to have a big conversation about how should we continue this problem, because we know that school funding across the state is going to be a huge issue. And they put it up on a shelf and they forgot to talk and really get into a debate about it. I think they should learn from my mock trial group. I think they should learn from the kids and put it on the table and have the big conversation that we want them all to have. So again, I'm not saying I understand which one is the best way to do it, but there are other models out there. There are other models that find a balance between like a sales tax and a property tax so that the burden doesn't fall heavily on just property tax. And that has been done in states throughout the United States many times. But it's going to take a big conversation and a plan. And again, I will pressure and say that our local legislators need to get some guts and do that work for us so that we can continue to not, I don't know, it feels like they're villainizing schools. They're saying they're the villain. They're the ones that are raising your taxes. They're the ones that are going to make this awful decision to raise your rates through referendum. And we have to, because we have to pay for what the state mandates us to do in our local schools. So rather than them feeling like they're the bad guy, I guess I get to feel like I'm the bad guy. And I don't want them to always have to pass the buck. I'd really like to be on a commission myself someday to have that conversation to say that there are better ways to do it. With the great computers and technology that we have right now, we should be able to throw into a computer this big problem and come back with potential strategies to get better at this school funding. So, enough. I'll get off the soapbox. I just really think there's a better way to do it, and I don't feel like they want to have the conversation or they're scared to. And I don't think they should be scared. I think the state is ready for a deep conversation in what we want public schools to look like and how we will fund them.
We talked about it before we went on the air about the price of farmland in Wisconsin as well.
I still get a couple farm magazines just because I used to love them. And I can remember getting Horde's Dairyman and sitting with my grandfather and really sitting there and judging those cows. We always thought that was so much fun to really put in this time and effort. And I know magazines aren't what they used to be, but there's still a great magazine out there called Successful Farmer that comes out. And I really like the magazine because it does give us a regional perspective, but it does the farming across the United States. And in a recent article, and I just found this really interesting, in November, they reported out that in Grant County, there were 50 acres that sold for almost 23,100 per acre. So 23,000 per acre. So these high quality tracts of land have become so expensive that I just think development of those is interesting, but also that these tracts and this cropland is something that Wisconsin has a tremendous amount of value in. I don't really want to get into a conversation about how that's taxed because that land is taxed very differently than the house that you live in, Phil. But I do want to say that to the local farmers, there's two things there. I don't think you should be the sole proprietor of tax burden, plain and simple. But I also need you to be realizing that your acres are worth a tremendous amount of dollars to the Wisconsin picture. And we've got to figure out a way to really remedy who we subsidize and who we don't subsidize as well.
Yeah, I think our first house was $25,000.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's kind of amazing, and you can't really buy a home anymore without $300,000. Right. So, yet at the same hand, I've got senior people that I truly adore. They're great people that live in our towns in Arena and Plain and Lone Rock and Spring Green. They bought their houses maybe for the $50,000, and now it's evaluated at $175,000, and it's almost pricing them out of staying in their homes because it's the tax burden that they're giving to property owners. So it's a big circle, right? It's a big circle and complex thing within a budget. When your values go up that much, so do your taxes go up that much, and the amount you're paying goes up that much. And if the school is the biggest burden on that tax bill, it does hurt. I get it. I don't want to tax seniors out of their homes any more than anybody does. So it's a complex system that I truly think one of the biggest answers is for us all to come to the table and really think about what our property taxes dollars are used for. And maybe there's a different way to use some sales tax within the state.
Loren Glasbrenner, our guest on the morning show, will take time out and come back with a little bit more. He's always well read, so we'll talk about a new book as well when we return with the morning show. Loren Glasbrenner, River Valley School, is our guest on the morning show today from WRCO Radio. A positive light on the district at the state wrestling tournament, the state individual tournament. You had a couple of young ladies sing the national anthem there.
We did. That was,
Josie Mahoney.
And Lucy somebody.
Spawn.
There you go. Yes, thank you so much. And they were at that state tournament, and I think they sang on Saturday morning. And I was able to watch it on YouTube, but that was incredible. Becky Schinker, our high school choir teacher, really drills into these kids that they need to represent wherever they go. And both Lucy is an athlete, and so is Josie is an athlete, but she's also on mock trial. These kids, in their free time, decide to go up on Saturday to be at the state wrestling tournament and be really proud of the national anthem and perform it in a way that's beyond measure. Just incredible young people doing great things and good representation of our district. It's really easy to be proud of the great things that the staff and kids do over at Valley.
I'll have to put in a request to have you bring them along and sing it for us.
For sure. Anytime. I'll bring them again. That'd be great. They'd love to do that. I think one of the things about being good at something is you want to share it. And so I think that's a great opportunity. It's funny you say that because Josie, yes, sings the national anthem, but she's also one of the 4 kids that I took with me to a meeting last week because they're recognized as grade 11 leaders going through some training at our CISA. So I had her in the car, and she shared that, but she was also sharing about mock trial and the great things that are coming. So anyway, yeah, it's a good thing to see the kids do great things and really get recognized for the great quality of work they put forward.
The book that we talked about going to break, it's called The Digital Delusion.
Yeah.
Could you talk about that a little bit today?
You bet. There's been a lot of talk around another book. The Anxious Generation is a book that's out there that really has talked about how the development of technology in the 70s and 80s and how that's now gone into the personal computers that we carry around called your cell phone. It really surpasses the ability of a kid's, I guess, mental capacity, and that we as adults have to really make sure that we're using the digital technology kind of advancement that we've had in the best ways possible. You'll hear parents say, no technology. My kid's not going to have a cell phone. They're not going to get anything. And that is fair. I want parents to have that voice. Yet you also have some parents that every time a kid gets in a car, they put an iPad on the back of the driver's seat, and you see kids watching movies as they go down the road rather than looking at the countryside. And so there's got to be a balance in there. And I want everybody to hear that your districts are really working hard in the region to make sure that we really dig into that balance. You know, there's one-to-one technology advancement so that every kid's got a Chromebook. You got to say that stuff because you know that you want your kids to have technology in their classroom during the day. But now we're learning that maybe we went too far, not only at school, but at home and in society. So Anxious Generation is really bringing forward that idea that digital technology has made our kids anxious, has made them compare themselves to others throughout the region, throughout the state, throughout the country, throughout the world, and that it throws on this fake competition onto a child so that they feel they have to go better, they have to go faster, they have to be better than somebody next door rather than think internally about what it is to be good in action, in morality, in learning, all those things. That's kind of what the Anxious Generation was about. The next book that I've been reading is called The Digital Delusion, and that's a book written by Dr. Jared Cooney Horvath. A long name, but it's about how classroom technology could be harming our kids and how to get them to thrive again. Okay, so I'm going to go all the way back to my 8th grade year, and I had a math teacher who was less than warm and fuzzy. His name was Fred Bowden, and he and the kids got to argue about whether or not we could bring a calculator, because calculators were new. That would have been right around 1980, right? 1980, the calculator comes. You want every kid to carry a calculator. Mr. Bowden was very clear that he wanted math fluency to come from your head, not from the computer that was sitting on your desk. And so he'd often say, no calculators in my room at all. He wanted mind math to be the leader of that. That was really... He was foreshadowing what we're talking about today. So thank you, Mr. Bowden. Long time ago, I appreciate you bringing it forward because that digital division that it created from the calculator and the computer coming forward to now what we're talking about in math fluency really hits home. We are finding that kids really can do things quickly if we give them a phone. But if I take that phone away, Phil, they can't do it quickly. If I say, okay, count by 5. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. You'd think that would be a simple number skill that most kids could still do. Nope. They want to get out their phone and they want to put in a 5 and then they want to put in a +5 and then they want to put in a +5, and it's really slowed them down. So something that intentionally was supposed to make them faster is now making them slower. And one of the things that we have done is we've relied too heavily on technology, and it has kind of surpassed or taken the place of mental capacity within students. So we at the schools are being really careful with how we're using technology, and we're really thinking about where technology fits and what's the best use of it. I will advocate that it's a balance. You can't get rid of technology. There have been districts that have said, nope, no more computers. We're done. No more computers in the whole building. I think that's a pipe dream because when they go to work, they're still going to have a computer. So I want to make sure that they're job ready. That's one thing I have to do, but I also want to make sure that they're brain ready. And to get them brain ready, I have to find that balance of how to use the digital platforms within our schools. So this book, I think, has got a really nice way of saying, what could a parent do to help us at school when there's too much technology in a kid's day? And one of the things they can do is you can scrap screens in the evenings. That's a big ask, right? You can come home, but you can't watch TV. You can't get on your computer. You can't get on your phone. I think that's a pipe dream. I think kids will always want to have that. I think at school, we need to start remembering how to take notes in a notebook. We need to work on math problems out loud. We need to model that. We need to use pieces of paper again. We need to think about having textbooks. But at home, we can also still have magazines like Horde's Dairymen. We can still have things out there like Field and Stream or Ducks Unlimited. Really have kids reading printed material. Also, have them write things on paper. There's nothing wrong with looking at let's say a recipe with a mom or a grandma and really thinking about math from the printed word rather than a digital word. So really thinking about being outside, using your brain, going back to paper and pencil. That's one thing we can do. Another thing we can do is really ask your kids to be involved in mental processes, like active mental things. So let's say we're making cookies with kids and it says that we've got a cup of flour and a cup of sugar. And we say, okay, we need to double this recipe. How would we do that? And have the kid mentally sit there with you and be able to double a recipe. It'd be even better if it had fractions like 3/4 cup of brown sugar. How do we double that? What's that going to be? Have a kid talk through a passive process, an active process of mentally doubling or subtracting is a really good process to have them go along with. Talks about also setting timers, saying, yep, you can have your iPad, but you're going to have your iPad for 20 minutes, and then we're going to go outside for 20 minutes. That's a simple way to make sure that we're balancing things out there. And the other thing that you can talk about really quickly is just making sure they're out of digital before they go to bed. There's a lot of sleep studies that are coming out that say if kids are active, even with a television, a computer, a phone, right before they go to bed, it changes the way they sleep. And it doesn't let their brain develop in the same way that our brains developed after doing chores or reading a book, right? So we really want to make sure that we're offering children the same opportunities that we had for brain development. And that means turning things off. If bedtime's at 9, you want to make sure that everything's off at 8. That maybe they're just grabbing a book. Maybe you guys are having a conversation. Maybe they're going into their bedroom and just really slowing down before they hit the hay, if you will. It makes me think, I took those 4 kids to Fenimore in the truck, and I was taking them to a leadership conference last week. Every single one of the 4 high schoolers is on their phone as I'm driving. They're having a conversation as I'm driving with their phones on. They're texting other people while their phone is on. And 3 out of the 4 had one of the earbuds, that thing that sits in your ear, so that they're listening to music. So when you think of that, they've got music going, they've got a verbal conversation going, they've got a texting conversation going, and they're scrolling probably through Instagram or Snapchat at the same time. So there's 4 conversations. And then I might have the truck radio on too, because I'm in the school vehicle. So there might be yet other kind of like passive noise in the background. So that might be 5 different conversations that they're processing just by sitting in a vehicle.
That's crazy.
It is crazy. I don't know what to think about it, because all the things in the phone is not just one conversation. That's multiple at the same time. Plus the radio's on. Plus they're talking to each other. It just doesn't make sense. And it boggles the mind how their brains are developing so differently than ours. To us, that becomes like so much noise. We often, as adults now, will say, turn everything off. Let's go for a walk. I don't want to see you guys on your phones. I want to just go for a walk. That's a great idea. But kids are so used to like 4 or 5, and I'll call them conversations happening at the same time, because they're afraid to miss something. And so it's just this use of digital that has really put a strain on their development. And I don't want to blame the kid. Technology advancements came forward. Those are great things. But how do we balance that within a student's day so that we're being really mindful to give them the best opportunities and that they're not being burdened with something unintentionally? I don't know how else to say it. So I continue to look for great examples of this and find that balance. Artificial intelligence, AI, has become something so huge in the world that we can't ignore it. Just like Mr. Bowden couldn't ignore the calculator. It's still here, right? But we've got to be able to talk about how that can't do the thinking for the kid. I can't just put everything into AI and say, okay, create the best plan for how to do, because it took all the thinking processes out of it. I could put into my phone, again, here's my chocolate chip cookie recipe, cut it in half or double it, and it would do all the stuff for me. But it's also okay to make your mind do that. And so that's just the push I'm making, is that we find that balance, that the kids know how to use that technology in the right times and right spaces, but we also pull way back and make sure that they're aware that mental capacity is still something that we want every human being to have.
Yeah, like your 8th grade math teacher.
Yes.
Eventually you got to work out a way that both can work.
Correct. I mean, a scientific calculator is a big deal.
Yeah.
And for anybody that's an engineer or working as a mathematician, that calculator is a godsend. It's something that really helps you. But you've got to know when to use it and how to use it. And so when I go back to math fluency, again, it's something that we're recognizing in our kids, especially around the ages of grade 3, grade 4, grade 5. They're learning 2s, they're learning 4s, they're learning 8s, they're learning 5s, they're learning 10s. But the ones that stumped us back in the day are 7s, where we go from 7 to 14 to 21 to 28 to 30, as we go up the scale. Those are hard for kids. The only way to get that automaticity there, that random, rapid retrieval to come from their brain, is to practice it. So I'm going to be old school and say, get some flashcards. Get kids back into flashcards. Get them back into some of those automaticity things that really make their minds work and get those patterns down. Now, should we give kids good grades if they can go faster? No. I think everybody will get there. We need to practice it without penalizing those who maybe don't have it yet. So there's great things that we can do. It'd be nice if everybody had a Smartie, the fastest ones can get something quick, but I just don't want kids to feel like the competition is also the bad thing or the only reason to do it. I want them to start thinking about how they develop their own brains, because they're going to be the owner of it in the end, and we're all going to be gone. And I want them to understand that realistic, that automatic, that really important part of their brain needs to be developed at the same time as how to use all this technology.
As a teacher, it's a real challenge as well about, okay, what theme has been AI aided, right?
Yeah.
And I know there are ways to figure that out, too.
Yeah. So it's funny because when you go back to a true, authentic assessment, and I think back to my days in college where they'd hand us this little half-size blue book and they'd give us a pen or a pencil and they'd be like, okay, here's your question. Go. You've got 30 minutes to answer this question, and you had to retrieve whether it was quotes or ideas or stories out of your head and put it on paper. And then somebody had to read all of those blue books. Really, to go back to authentic, I guess assessment, again, is really having kids present without technology, present in front of people, present your argument and be able to come up with the facts that really shine and show that you know what you're talking about, which goes back to what we started our conversation, mock trial. Have kids involved in those argumentative, respectful, professional conversations so that they can really defend the idea rather than always rely on technology.
Some of your speaking competitions, we talked about forensics, I know FFA
Absolutely.
as well, where they will give you, okay, here's the subject, you've got a half hour to write a speech. Some of those kind of things, I think, that's old school. That's still good.
That is still good. I think you're 100% right, Mr. Filney. Those are still good. And I think if we can get kids to graduate from high school but feel like they're an independent thinker and an independent learner, people are going to want to hire those kids. A kid that can come into a job interview, be confident but humble at the same time, and have some mental capacity to say, I'm trainable. You can educate me for your company, but I'm ready for it because I've practiced some really good mental skills and I've got a good background in my, scholastic aptitude, but I'm ready. I'm ready to learn with you at a company. They'll be hired immediately. It's the quiet, sit back in the back and not be able to talk to people. I think that we're worried that technology will overtake and we're just going to have a bunch of cubicle learners that aren't able to communicate the needs of the world around them. Certainly
some wonderful students out there, a lot of wonderful things going on though too. Sometimes, you and our parents said this too, about, these kids these days, but they're still some great kids.
Yeah, there are incredible kids out there. Kids these days are having to put up with so much more than we had to put up with. We didn't have cable out on our house in Fenimore at first, and now they've got 150 channels, plus they've got a computer in front of them, their cell phone, plus there's all this other stuff, and I consider that all to just be noise in the background that's really getting in the way of their brain development. And I think we need to, as adults, as grandparents, aunts, uncles, parents, really be aware that that noise could be hurting our kids, and we need to be really careful in how much digital that we provide them.
Always a good visit. Again, the book is The Digital Delusion.
Absolutely. Go to your local library. They'd love to check it out.
Sounds good. Thanks for coming in. We'll see you in April.
Thanks so much. I love being here. Thank you for what you do to help us make sure that we tell the stories of our local schools. Again, our local schools are the foundation of our local communities, and I truly believe in public ed. So don't privatize us. Just continue to support us, because we're doing the great work that I think you want us to do.
Loren Glasbrenner, River Valley Schools, our guest for his monthly visit here on The Morning Show.